I was 24 when this happened, working my second year at a mid-sized chain convenience store just off a state highway in western Pennsylvania. Nothing rural, nothing scenic, just a strip of asphalt, gas pumps, and a parking lot that always smelled faintly of oil and old coffee. I worked overnights because it paid a little more, and honestly, I liked the quiet. I'm not a thrill seeker or anything. I've always been the cautious type, double-checking locks, reading reviews before buying anything, keeping my head down. This was back in late October, right when the nights started getting colder, but winter hadn't fully arrived yet. The store was open 24 hours, but after midnight it was usually dead. Truckers, the occasional insomniac, someone grabbing cigarettes or energy drinks. Predictable. Safe, I thought. That night started like every other shift. I grabbed a coffee from the break room that tasted burnt no matter how much cream I added, clocked in at 10:58 p.m. and relieved the evening cashier. She warned me the register was acting slow again, rolled her eyes and left. Same routine. I remember feeling unusually calm. I had a podcast queued up in one ear, volume low enough to still hear the door chime. Outside, the parking lot lights buzzed softly, attracting moths. Inside, the fluorescent lights hummed. It felt boring in the best way. If someone had told me that night would stick with me for years, I would have laughed. The first couple of hours passed exactly how they always did. I faced shelves, wiped down the counter, and refilled the coffee station, even though I knew no one would touch it until morning. Around midnight, a regular truck driver came in. Dave, I think his name was. He nodded at me, grabbed a soda and beef jerky, paid in exact change like always, and left without a word. That alone made the store feel grounded, normal. Around 12:40 a.m., I did my usual walkthrough, bathroom check, cooler check, backroom door locked. The store had a long rectangular layout with aisles running parallel to the front windows. From the register, you could see almost everything except the far corner near the freezers. I remember adjusting one of the floor mats because it kept curling up at the edge. Little things like that mattered to me. Keeping busy helped the night move faster. At about 1:10 a.m., the automatic doors opened and a guy walked in. I barely looked up at first, just the sound of the chime registering in my brain. He looked like a normal customer, late 30s, maybe early 40s. Baseball cap pulled low, hoodie zipped up, jeans, nothing memorable. He nodded once, didn't say anything, and headed toward the back of the store. I noticed him mostly because he didn't grab a basket. Most people wandering the aisles do. He just walked slowly, hands in his pockets, like he wasn't sure what he wanted. I shrugged it off and went back to straightening the candy display. That's the thing about retail. You learn to ignore people a little. Otherwise, you'd go insane. About 10 minutes passed and I realized I hadn't heard any movement from him. No cooler doors opening, no chip bags rustling, just silence. I glanced toward the back aisle. He was standing near the freezer section, facing the glass doors, but not looking at anything specific. Just standing there, completely still. I told myself he was probably reading labels or waiting for something to click in his head. People do weird stuff when they're tired. I went back to the register and pretended to organize receipts, but I kept flicking my eyes up. Every time I looked, he was still there. Same spot, same posture. Eventually, I called out, trying to sound casual. "Hey, just let me know if you need help finding anything." He didn't respond. I assumed maybe he hadn't heard me, so I let it go. A few minutes later, he started walking again, slowly, down the aisle toward the drinks. I felt stupid for being tense. Night shifts mess with your head. Then I noticed something else. Every time I moved, he stopped. If I walked behind the counter, he paused. If I leaned down to grab a bag, he froze. It wasn't obvious enough to accuse him of anything, but it was enough to make my stomach tighten. At one point, I went into the back room to grab more paper towels. I was only gone maybe 30 seconds. When I came back out, he was standing much closer to the front of the store, too close for how little time had passed. He smiled when our eyes met. Not a friendly smile, just lips pulled back, no warmth behind it. "You open all night?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "All night." He nodded like that confirmed something for him. Then he walked back toward the aisles again, hands still in his pockets. That was the moment I stopped feeling alone in a normal way and started feeling watched. I tried to ground myself in routine. I pretended to check inventory on the register screen, but my hands felt clumsy on the keyboard. I could hear his footsteps now, soft rubber soles against tile, deliberately slow. The store phone rang suddenly, and I nearly jumped out of my skin. It was a wrong number. I hung up and laughed quietly at myself, but my heart didn't slow down. When I looked up again, he was gone from the aisles. For a second, relief washed over me. Maybe he'd left and I just missed the door chime. Then I noticed the automatic doors were still closed. I leaned slightly over the counter and scanned the store. Nothing. No movement. The aisles were empty. My chest tightened. "Hello?" I called out, hating how thin my voice sounded. No answer. I stepped out from behind the counter and walked slowly toward the back. Every sense turned up too high. The hum of the freezers sounded louder. My own breathing felt intrusive. As I rounded the last aisle, he stepped out from behind the end cap. I flinched so hard I actually stumbled back. "Sorry," he said quickly. "Didn't mean to scare you." "That's, okay," I said. "Did you find what you needed?" He tilted his head slightly, still deciding. He was closer now, close enough that I could smell him. Something sour, like old sweat and metal. His eyes kept flicking past me toward the counter, toward the doors. I walked back to the register and he followed. Slowly, not rushing, but not browsing anymore either. When we reached the front, he stopped just short of the counter and leaned forward slightly. "You're here alone?" he asked. I didn't answer right away. "There's a camera," I said instead, gesturing vaguely upward. He smiled again, wider this time. "I figured." He placed a single bottle of water on the counter. I rang it up with hands that were starting to shake despite my efforts to stay calm. "That'll be $1.89, I said. He didn't reach for his wallet. Instead, he leaned in closer and lowered his voice. "You ever get scared working these shifts?" I swallowed. "Not really." He stared at me for a long second. The silence stretched, heavy and deliberate. "I think you do," he said quietly. My pulse pounded in my ears. I slid my hand subtly toward the panic button under the counter, praying he wouldn't notice. He finally pulled out cash, slow and exaggerated, watching my face the whole time. I handed him his change, and for a moment I thought that would be it, that he'd leave and I'd feel stupid for weeks afterward. But instead of turning toward the door, he stood there. "You lock up alone too?" he asked. That was it. I pressed the panic button. Nothing happened immediately. No sirens, no flashing lights. His eyes dropped briefly to the counter, then back up to my face. "You shouldn't do that," he said. Before I could react, he reached across the counter, not grabbing me, just close enough that I felt the air move, and whispered, "I was just talking." I backed away instinctively. "You need to leave." For a second, I thought he might not. Then the distant wail of sirens grew louder, not right outside, but close enough. His expression shifted. Something like irritation crossed his face. He stepped back, raised his hand slightly and chuckled. "Relax," he said. "Wrong place." Then he turned and walked out. The doors slid shut behind him like nothing had happened. The police showed up about 8 minutes later. By then my legs were shaking so badly I had to sit down on a crate in the back room. I tried to explain everything, but it sounded thin even to my own ears. The officers checked the parking lot, took my statement, and reviewed the footage. On camera, he looked normal, calm, no obvious threat, no crime. They told me I did the right thing, but gently implied it might have been a misunderstanding. One of them even joked that night shifts make everyone a little jumpy. They offered to walk me to my car when my shift ended. I accepted without hesitation. I didn't sleep much after that. For weeks, every sound outside my apartment made my stomach drop. I transferred to day shifts a month later. It's been 3 years. Sometimes, when I stop at a convenience store late at night, I catch myself watching the aisles too closely, listening for footsteps that don't quite match the rhythm of shopping. Once, a few months ago, I saw a man in a hoodie standing by the freezers, completely still. He smiled when I noticed him. I left my basket on the floor and walked out.